going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Living the Life Show podcast. I'm your host, Columbus Cody. So glad you chose to join me today. And today I want to talk about how bad do you want it? How bad do you really want this? And this is going to benefit you spiritually and physically, in our regular physical bodies, in our mindset, and in our spiritual journey. How bad do you want it? And I want us to look at a story, and we're not going to read all of it. I just want to point out some of the key components of this story. And you can find this story in 2 Kings chapter 5, and especially between verse 1 through 14. And this story is about a commander in the army of Aram. His name was Naaman. And Naaman had a skin disease called leprosy. Leprosy is like the modern day AIDS. There was no cure for it back then. And your flesh would basically start to rot away or eat away. And once you contracted leprosy, you had to be put out of the city, put out of the town. You had to announce that you're unclean. You had to say it out loud when people would come near, unclean, so they know to stay away from you, because it was contagious and they didn't want to spread it. You had to, you were ostracized. You were put away from everybody, even your loved ones, even your jobs. Everything was affected because of this disease. Well, Naaman was a commander of the army, but he was beloved. He was his king loved him, and he had the Israelites. He had taken captive. He had a little Israelite servant girl in his home, and when she found out that her master had leprosy, she told him about the prophet Elisha, and she says, "There's a prophet that could help you, a prophet that could heal you." And so, of course, Naaman gets excited about this because, again, when you get leprosy, that's almost like a death sentence. And he reaches out to the king. The king writes a letter to send to the man of God to help his servant Naaman. And he loves his servant. So obviously, if you're willing to go through all this trouble, Naaman was a person that probably lived with a high character. The fact that the servant girl was willing to share something that would help him says that he probably had great character, which is a lesson to me in my life that I need to treat everybody honorably, because I don't know who I'm going to need. It could be someone that works for me. It could be someone I work for that helps me down the road. You need to make sure you treat everyone with kindness, with dignity, with integrity. And when you do, it comes back. The Bible tells us that what we sow, we reap. So if you sow love, you sow kindness, you sow compassion on others, it will come back to you. So Naaman gets the letter. He heads down to meet Elisha, and Elisha sends a servant out to tell Naaman what to do. He tells Naaman to go down to the river and to dip into the river 7 times. All right. And Naaman immediately gets a little offended because, first off, the man of God didn't come out himself to greet him, but he sends a servant to greet him. And then he tells me to go dip in the muddy water 7 times. And so he starts to head back. Man, I'm not going to go dip in that water. What kind of instructions is that? I expected more from this guy. So he starts to head back, and then his other servants come to him and they say, "Naaman, please, just think about what he's saying. All he's saying is dip in the water. If it was something difficult, if it was more hard, you would have done it. He's just asking you to dip in the water 7 times. I'm a firm believer that in life, we will accomplish the things in life that we really want to accomplish. And what I mean by that is when you truly want something bad enough, you will not rest until you get it. That's just what I've learned in life. When we say a lot of times we want something, but until we want it bad enough, we don't move on what we say. You have to move on what you say. And when you really want it bad enough, everything about your life is determined to get it. Everything, your thoughts, your deeds, your actions, your plans, your goals, everything lines up to go after that one thing. So the question always comes back, how bad do you want it? How bad do you want it? So Naaman, he goes down to the water and he dips in the water. I like to think of it like this. He dips in the water the first time and he comes up and he looks at his skin. He doesn't see a change. And part of his mind is probably thinking how stupid I must look dipping in this dirty, muddy water. He has to fight the urge to get up every time and say, you know what, this is dumb. This is not smart. Why am I doing this? This is probably not going to work. That's what the enemy will do to us. When God gives us directions, sometimes what God requires us to do seems strange to us. It seems weird to us. He says, love your enemies. That's strange. That's not normal. He says, if your right eye offend thee, pluck it out. He says, if your right hand offend thee, cut it off and throw it away. Get rid of it. That's not normal. That's not normal advice. That's not normal instruction. This is weird to me. But sometimes what God calls us to do, the blessing is right past the weird part. The blessing is right past the logical part. Because when you step out and you do it his way, it's obvious that God has done that, because no doubt people have been in that water all the time and they didn't come forth the way Naaman came forth. So he dips down the second time and then the third time and he looks at his skin, no change. No doubt he's thinking, I should probably quit this. This doesn't make sense. But maybe he looks over and he sees the face of his men that are with him and they're still urging him on. Come on, Naaman. That's 3, 4 more to go, Naaman. 4 more to go. And he dips and he dips and he dips. And he dips, and then he dips the 7th time. And when he comes up, if you were to look at verse 14, you will see how God describes, or how his skin is described. He went from being a man with leprosy to a man that his skin was restored to that of a young boy. He went from, and this is what I love about God. A lot of times when God blesses us, he blesses us greater than what we asked for. We asked just to be healed from leprosy. He would have still taken his old man's skin. But God says, not only am I going to heal you of leprosy, I'm going to restore your skin to a young man's skin. The world will know that it wasn't some weird coincidence. God was a part of this. You see, our ability to achieve is linked. It's linked to how badly we want to succeed. Never forget that. Our ability to achieve is linked to how badly we want to achieve, or to how badly we want to succeed. See, I'm not a dream killer. I learned years ago to never be a dream killer. I taught high school for 10 years. And when I teach my students, I hear them all the time. They have all these big dreams, these big goals. They want to play in the NFL. They want to play professional soccer. They want to be a professional basketball player. But when you ask them, are you practicing? Nah, not today. You don't want it bad enough, because those that make it to the NBA, the only thing they're thinking about is practicing. We have to get them to focus on school because they just want to practice. I just want to practice. Or they focus on school as well because they know school is going to be the tool that helps them get into the school they really want. So when their friends go out and hang out and have fun at the party, they're like, nah, I got to study for this test because I got to do well. I got to do good on my ACT because I want to get into this college so that I can get to the NBA. Their goals supersede their current desire for fun, for pleasure. What in your life have you given up to get what you really want? What are you willing to sacrifice to get what you really want? Because when you want it bad enough, you start making changes. You start making moves. So the question always comes back, how bad do you want it? How bad do you want it? In our Sunday school years ago, we were studying about the blind beggar, and he was on the side of the road and he called out to Jesus, Jesus, please help me. Jesus, help me. And the crowd tried to hush him. Hey, hush it up. Jesus got more stuff to do. He doesn't have time for you. And he calls out even the more, Jesus, please have compassion on me. Have mercy on me. You see, when you want something bad enough, you're willing to push past what the crowd says you should do. You don't listen to the crowd. You do what is necessary to get the attention of Christ. And here's what I've learned. If you ever get an audience with Jesus, anything can happen. Anything can change. Everything becomes possible when you get an audience with Christ. So are you willing to cry out to Christ even when the world tells you to shut it down? Are you willing to scream out to Jesus even though the world tells you he doesn't have time for you? How bad do you want to see Jesus? You know, I think about in Luke chapter 19, I believe it is, there's a little man in that chapter called Zacchaeus. And Zacchaeus was a tax collector. He was a man that did wrong. He hustled people. He took their money. He overcharged them. People hated him. And so he hears that Jesus is coming to town and he wants to see Jesus, but he's a small man. He doesn't have a large stature and he's trying to see, but the crowd is so big that he can't see Jesus. And so the Bible tells us he runs up ahead. He climbs up a tree, and he climbs a tree so that he could see Jesus as Jesus came that way. And that passage has always blessed me because I think about it. How bad do we want to meet Jesus? Are we willing to do like Zacchaeus and run down the road and climb up the tree? Or do we expect Jesus to force his way to us? Are you willing to press forward to find your way to him? He ran, he climbed, he did everything he had to do to get to Jesus. We live 12 minutes from our church driving, and we won't show up on Sundays. We are 32 paces away from our computer to get on Zoom, to get on YouTube, to watch our live stream of our church, and we won't log on Sunday. How bad do you really want to be connected to Christ? I heard a preacher say years ago, and it has always blessed me and it stayed with me. You are as close to Christ as you want to be. You are as close to Christ as you want to be. And what that statement meant to me and has always meant to me is that there's nothing blocking me from being with Christ except me. I need to get me out of the way and allow God to really move in my life. There's nothing blocking that blessing except me, my thoughts, my deeds, my actions, my desires. If my desire is to walk with God, it all boils down to how bad do you want it? Do you want it enough to get up earlier to spend time in your Bible? Do you want it enough to get up to stay up later and spend time in prayer? How bad do you want to be connected to Christ? There was another time where there was a paralytic man, and they found out Jesus was in town, and so they wanted to bring the paralyzed friend to Jesus, but again, it was such a large crowd they couldn't get to him, and so they climbed up on top of the roof and they disassembled, they destroyed the roof to lower the man down into where Jesus was at. And they lower his bed down to where Jesus is at. And when Jesus sees it, he says, now this is what faith looks like. You do whatever it takes to get to me. And because of that, take up your bed and walk. You are healed, my son. Take up your bed and walk. Go and sin no more. How bad do you want it? How bad do you want to be connected with him? How bad do you want to live righteously? How bad do you want to honor God with your life? Because it is possible. If you desire it enough, you will make the moves. I've said, I want to lose some weight, but I said it while eating cookies and a Twinkie. I didn't want it bad enough yet. And then one day I got on the scale and the scale said 240. And I had never been that heavy in my life. And when I got on that scale and I saw 240, my desires immediately shifted. I wanted it bad. I had to lose weight. I had to. So I changed my eating. I started exercising more. And now I'm down to 203. Okay. So that means I've lost 37 pounds. And I did it in a short amount of time because my desires shifted from I kind of want it to I have to have it. And when you have to have a walk with Christ and you have to have a closeness with Christ, you will make it happen. You'll do everything in your power. See, the Lord will empower you, but you got to use the power that he's placed within you to make it happen. It all boils back down to how bad do you want it? How bad? Now, let me tell you how bad God wanted it for you. John 3:16 says, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. That's how bad he wanted for you to be saved. He gave his only son for you and for me. The question isn't how bad does he want it? The question is how bad do you want it? So if you want Christ to reign and rule and rest in your heart, all you have to do is ask. And when you ask him to enter your heart, then you have to want it bad enough, want to maintenance and maintain the relationship, which means you've got to spend time with him in the Bible. You've got to spend time with him in prayer. And when you do that, you will start to see your life grow and grow and grow. But it all boils down to that simple question. How bad do you want it? Thank you guys so much for joining me today for today's podcast. I pray that something has been said to encourage you, to lift your spirits. I pray that you will share this video or this podcast with someone else, encourage them on their journey because they might think they want it, but they haven't come to a point where they want it bad enough. Because when you want it bad enough, you'll be like Zacchaeus. You will run, climb, you'll do whatever it takes. The Bible says, ask, seek, knock. Ask you shall be given. Seek, you shall find. Knock, and the door shall be open. When you ask and it doesn't show up, do you ask again? When you seek and you don't find, do you keep looking? When you knock, do you keep knocking until that door opens? How bad do you want it? Jacob wrestled with an angel. He wrestled with him. The angel said, let me go. He says, I'm not letting you go till you bless me. How bad do you want it? How bad? The angel had to touch his hip socket and put his hip out of joint for Jacob to release him. That's how bad he wanted it. But God, he acknowledged that Jacob, his tenacity, his persistence. And when you are persistent with Christ, persistence pays off. How bad do you want it? Call out to him today. Ask him into your heart. Ask him to be your Lord. Ask him to be your Savior. And then start positioning yourself to continue to grow. Okay. God bless you guys. I love you guys. I pray that you will again subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe and follow the podcast on whatever platform you like, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and Spotify. So I would love to have your support there. And if you would take a moment and leave a comment, leave a rating for the show. If you find that the show blesses you, we would love to have your support in that way. God bless you guys. Let's get busy living the life. How'd you like to join me in doing a great thing? That's right, 1,000 before Thanksgiving. I'm trying to sell 1,000 copies of my books before Thanksgiving and take the proceeds from each book sold and donate those to local charities that help families in need for the holiday season. Go to www.columbuscody.com to grab your book or books, or if you don't need a book, just make a donation. Help me help others.